Same spot as the last shot. Wow. Yikes. I'm bringing the tape measure for that one. Wow, wow, wow. That looks like about a 3-inch 5-shot group. Maybe 3.5 or 4, but I'll bring a tape down and we'll see. I can zoom anymore. Hey guys, this is Tim with Little Crow Gunworks. Welcome back to the channel. Today we wanted to do a video. This is Dale Hegstrom, owner of Little Crow Gunworks and our gunsmith. We wanted to do a video today on a concept that we've been working on. We kind of started it last fall and we wanted to spend a bunch of time on it this coming year in 2025. And it's we're doing it for a couple reasons. I guess the biggest one would be to address some really commonly asked questions that we get. We get a lot of calls from guys, and it almost seems like guys are afraid they're inconveniencing us by calling and asking questions, which is silly because that's why we're here. We're here to provide a service. So this series, it's going to be kind of an extended project where we're not going to have a set deadline for it. We're going to kind of keep adding things to it as we come up with them. But it's going to be focused around rebarreling existing rifles. So we get a lot of calls from guys that have questions about what all is entailed in rebarreling a rifle and what the costs are, and we wanted to kind of lower the intimidation level with that and get you guys some good information, because I think there's a ton of guys out there that have a rifle that has been hanging out in their safe, and maybe they don't shoot it as much as they used to anymore, and they want an excuse to breathe some new life into it, but don't necessarily know what their options are or what all is involved. So Dale and I spent some time talking about this, and we thought that this was something that we could address and work on some cool cartridges that excited us in the meantime. We feel like with the way things are going now, this is kind of a segment of the population that isn't really being catered to or addressed. Nowadays, it seems like if you want a custom rifle or a customized rifle, the big things now are pre-fit barrels and modularity and kind of Legoing the rifle together yourself. So that's one side of the equation that we feel a lot of companies are catering to. And then the other side would be like the full custom rifle end, which we do that as well, but that's
a full system.
Yeah, a full system. But I feel like that's not necessarily where most people live and breathe. Like most people are kind of they either have a factory rifle and that's what they're using, or they might have a factory rifle, like I said, that they want to breathe some new life into, but don't know what's involved. So that's the biggest reason why we're doing this, is we want to get you guys information and make this more approachable. So who's our target audience? This would be the cartridges that we're going to be focusing on this year are long action cartridges that have a standard 473 bolt face, like a 30-06, 270, 25-06, 280 Remington, things like that. Those are going to be the primary cartridges we're working on this year, but this information that we're giving about rebarreling can apply to any rifle that you have. The costs and things associated with it are all very similar, regardless of what cartridge you have or what cartridge you're trying to turn it into. So that the supply is across the board. So the rifles in question, the target rifles in question that would be optimal for this, for a rebarrel for these long action standard bolt face cartridges would be like your Remington 700, your Ruger M77, Winchester Model 70, Tikka M695, any of the Savage 110 long actions, basically anything with a 473 bolt face that is either now currently currently a 25-06, 270, 280 Remington, or 30-06. Those would be the prime candidates for this.
T3 is in there as well.
Yeah, T3 would be in there as well too. The T3, the only limiting factor is the magazine length, which for a lot of the cartridges that we're focusing on, that would be fine. The M695 would just allow a little more space if you're doing, if you're using some longer bullets.
It might be that gun that you worked all summer baling hay or delivering papers, and it was your first rifle that you bought, but it's not fitting your needs anymore, but there's still a lot of sentimental value attached to that gun.
Or maybe it was passed down to you. Maybe it was your grandfather's gun, or your dad bought it for you as your first rifle. I can say for me, for a personal example, that's what I did. My first rifle was a Remington 700 30-06 ADL that I recently had Dale. We worked together on to take it out of basically the matte black Remington finish with a synthetic stock. We put a new chrome moly barrel on it and polished everything, blued all the steel, and then put it in a nice deluxe Monte Carlo style wooden stock, and put a new barrel on it and changed it from a 30-06 into a 257 Roberts. So that's a perfect example of something that you can do. The 257 Roberts isn't a cartridge we happen to be working on currently, but that's just an example of something you can do. It was my first gun. I didn't want to get rid of it. The 257 Roberts cartridge had a lot of meaning to my grandfather. He had a 257 Roberts that I wasn't able to get my hands on when he passed, so I thought, I'm going to make use of this and kind of, create a family heirloom out of it because it had meaning to me, and I wanted to do something cool with it and give me an excuse to take it in the woods again. So that's kind of what we're focusing on is, maybe you have that gun that is meaningful enough to you, you don't want to get rid of it, but like Dale said, it doesn't really suit your life anymore, and maybe you want to have an excuse to start playing with it again. And that's a huge portion of the population that I think fits that, but isn't being catered to and isn't being talked to. So that's what we're trying to do with this project. So I think we'll go into some of the costs associated with it. So I think the biggest cost obviously is the barrel and the labor. Regardless of what rifle you send us as a donor, you're going to have the shipping costs to get it to us. And then once we get it, we'll work with you to figure out what profile, length, and twist barrel and what cartridge you want that's going to fit into your stock. We do have the ability to modify the stock if needed to accommodate a bigger profile barrel. And there's, that's an hourly charge associated with Dale's machine time, whatever he needs to do to modify it to fit it in there. As far as other parts that you might want to use, like if you have a Remington 700, they have tremendous support as far as aftermarket parts, stocks, triggers, things like that. And they have a wide range of cost associated with those, and you're going to have the most options with that. If you have, say, a Ruger M77 or maybe a different rifle that doesn't necessarily have an aftermarket trigger, Dale has the ability to work on triggers, and do a trigger job and get it to break as clean as he can at a reasonable weight and just tune it up, make it better. And
it's surprising how many people just assume that they're going to have a new trigger put in a gun, and the trigger that it comes with isn't, that you can't work on them. Though the only trigger that, we used to adjust the older 700 triggers all the time, Ruger 77s, Winchester Model 70s. The Tikas are pretty much user adjustable, so you don't have to figure in $250 for a new trigger just because you have something, an aftermarket trigger is nice, but I think we can put out a trigger job that most people are going to be really happy with.
Right. Yeah, and that's what separates a company like us from a lot of other companies, where nowadays you have a lot of companies that are putting rifles together, kind of that Lego style, but they're not necessarily gunsmiths, where Dale has been doing this for a very long time, and he can do things that not everybody else can do. So he can make your factory trigger and tune it as if it's an aftermarket trigger, and you wouldn't know the difference. So that's a service we can offer, and one thing that separates us from maybe a lot of other companies. And then fluting, we order primarily Excalibur barrels. We can get a barrel from anybody, but we use Excalibur the most because we feel like they have the most options as far as profile, lengths, twist rates, groove types, profiles, fluting types. Just they have so many options, and we've cut a lot of their barrels, and they all shoot, and and their lead time is second to none. When we order a barrel, so you send your rifle in, we discuss what barrel to put on it. We order the barrel from them. We usually see it within 3 to 8 weeks, depending on how busy they are. Where a lot of other barrel companies, like some of the cut rifle barrel companies, are going to be 8 to 18 months just for us to get the barrel before we even start working on the rifle. So using Excalibur, they shoot great. We have a lot of options. Their lead times are second to none, and allows us to turn the rifle around and get it back to you as soon as possible. So other than that, as far as the parts, again, that's going to vary greatly depending on what you choose. Like an aftermarket stock can be anywhere from $300 to $1,200, depending on what you want and how much you want to spend. So reviewing that one by one isn't a value, but just know that there's a wide range of costs associated with the stocks. And then triggers can be $150, $160 up to $330. Depending on what you choose and what brand and the pull weight and that sort of thing, features.
The rifle we have here is a 6.5 RPM, and it kind of fits into this profile that we were looking for to show you guys rebarreling options and stuff like that. So when I rebarreled this gun and put it together, you pretty much have to put 100 rounds through the barrel to break it in before you start your load development and stuff like that. So one of the things I thought about was, well, during that 100 rounds, we might as well do a before and after on the bedding of it, because it's got a HS precision stock. And the first, these are the first box of ammo we put through this gun. And then
is averaging around 1 MOA. And you guys have seen this. I showed these targets in part 9 of the 7mm series. If you saw that series in that video where we talked about Western hunting accuracy, this is what I shared in that, where before he bedded it, it averaged about 1 MOA. And then after he bedded it, it came down to about 3/4 MOA. So that's just one step of our, kind of accurizing process. That's one thing that made the gun shoot 25% better. So Dale mentioned the cartridge that we decided to start with, and part of, I guess, why we're doing this is that, and why this excites us, is that with the development of more modern design bullets and higher BC bullets, and having barrel manufacturers take on a whole bunch of different twist rates and tighter twist rates, and again, new cartridge design like the 6.5 Weatherby RPM, it's now possible to get a lot more performance than you could historically out of that, in this case, long action standard bolt face footprint. You can now get a lot more performance out of that package with just a simple rebarrel and new brass and a new set of dies, or factory ammo if you shoot factory ammo. So we look at all the new different cartridges and things that come out, and we both were kind of peeking at the 6.5 RPM and interested in it, so decided to start with that. And after we were both interested in it enough that we thought it would be a good idea to build this rifle so we could test the cartridge and see if it was all it was cut out to be, or maybe we could get even more out of it. And after being able to play with it, I can confidently say that for this package, for a standard bolt face long action, the 6.5 Weatherby RPM is going to give you the most ballistic performance of anything you could possibly put in it. As far as trajectory, wind drift, hit probability, there isn't a higher performance cartridge you can put in a 473 long action than the 6.5 Weatherby RPM. So we were thinking that's where we were going to land, but after we got an opportunity to play with it, this is a special cartridge, and we're very excited about it. So this year, what we're focusing on, I guess one we already did, in that I think the four best candidates for this, if you're going to rebarrel from your old legacy cartridge, is the 6.5 Weatherby RPM, if you need a kind of an all-purpose cartridge, and you want as high a performance as you can get in that package. And then another great option, so the 6.5 Weatherby RPM would be, obviously, it would shine with medium game, deer, antelope, things like that, but would still be suitable for up to elk if that was something you decided to do, with the right bullet. We did test a few different bullets, which we'll be going into more in the next video. We tested the 130 AccuBond, 130 CX, and then the 156 Burger Extreme Outer Limits. So then another cartridge that we think fits great in this platform, we already spent a lot of time on last year, and that's the 280 Ackley Improved. That is, again, another great all-purpose cartridge that is a little better suited for elk, but maybe has a little bit less ballistic performance than the 6.5 RPM. Dale has pretty extensive experience with the 280. It was fairly new to me when I played with it last year, but Dale shot it quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And doesn't really have anything bad to say about it.
No, shot a lot of game with it. It always works.
Yeah, it's a fantastic cartridge, and I got to learn that last year. So that's the first two. The third would be, that we're going to be working on this year, is a 270 Winchester with a fast twist. So we have a lot of barrels in stock, and we have a tendency to err on the faster twist side of things, and this is something that Dale had a barrel for a while and was looking for an excuse to put one together, and we decided to do it, and we're going to be doing some thorough testing on that this year as well. So that'll be part of this video series. 6.5 RPM video will be next, and then probably do the 270 Winchester fast twist after that. We'll do a couple videos on that and the performance we were able to get out of that, testing a few different bullets. And like I said, the 280 we already did last year, and then the fourth one is going to be the 338 Weatherby RPM. So you had some good ideas on why you think this is a good option for a certain crowd of people, and why you might want something that big.
Yeah, I think there's getting to be places in this country that grizzly bears are coming back and that type of thing, and you may have not wanted to get into a Magnum cartridge, and but you realize you need something just in case you come nose to nose with a grizzly bear. Well, I think the 338 RPM is going to be a good cartridge. Maybe you decided you're going to Alaska and don't want the full expense of a completely different rifle, and we can rebuild your short action into a 338 RPM for your Alaskan moose trip.
Right. Yeah, your standard long action, if you have a 270, and like Dale said, you're booking that Alaska hunt, or you're booking a big elk hunt and you have a 270, but it's going to be in northern Montana or northern Idaho, and you might come face to face with something that has teeth, and you want a little extra insurance. We feel like this is a great cartridge, and we're excited to test it and play with it and see what we can get out of that too. And then the 270, we probably haven't, I don't think we've decided on what bullets we're going to do with that. It'll likely be similar to what we did with the 6.5 RPM, where we do maybe a moderate weight bonded, big monolithic, and maybe a big target bullet like the big Burger 170 or something. The barrel we have has adequate twist to shoot whatever we want, so I think that's going to be a really interesting project and fun for me, because I've never loaded a 270. Dale has, obviously, but I haven't, so I think that's going to be exciting. He loaded it actually a bit for his last elk hunt as kind of a backup gun, and ended up loading the 150 grain Nosser long range AccuBond, and through a strange series of events, ended up going out with the intention to do some scouting, and ended up shooting his bull with that 270, not knowing he was going to run into something.
Well, I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and I didn't really want to drag along a 10-pound gun. I wanted more of an 8-pound gun in case I got into some steep hills. So I thought, well, I'll grab the light gun just so I don't die on a
Yeah.
mere scouting trip.
Yeah, it was his first time in this camp, and he didn't know where the guide was going to be taking him. And he's like, I don't know what kind of rodeo I'm in for here. I better bring the light gun just in case. And ended up shooting his elk that night with that 270, and it worked just great. So I'm excited to play with that. So that's the 4 cartridges, just to review them. The 280 we already did. That's a great option. 6.5 Weatherby RPM fast twist, which will be the next video. 270 Winchester fast twist. And then the 338 Weatherby RPM. And this may be something that we add cartridges to down the road as well. That's just what we're going to try to get done this year. So it'll be kind of an ongoing thing. And then there's other rifles and projects we'll be working on too. But look for those to be kind of strung out across the year. Go on to the next thing here. So I guess, why don't we talk a little bit about the history of sporterizing rifles and how that came to be, and why this is exciting us.
So I started gunsmithing in the mid 80s, and by then the golden age of what I would call gunsmithing was just coming to an end. The first golden age, I should say. When, basically guys were pulling apart surplus Mauser 98s and fitting barrels and wood stocks to them and building custom rifles that way. Well, that came to an end. Starting in the mid 70s, the price of labor went way up. So it put an end to a lot of that, where it was just too costly to build a custom rifle on a surplus action because it was too labor intensive. And from there, I would say that the next step was building rifles on Remington 700s became the next big thing, and rightfully so. The 700s are a great action. The Army has used them for sniper rifles and long range work. So along with that became an industry where if you were going to make any kind of aftermarket parts, the first thing you were going to start with was a 7. You were going to make parts for Remington 700 and build off of that. So beginning about 10, 15 years ago, gunsmith shops started making what I call systems rifles, where you don't really have a choice in stocks. They're gonna use the stocks they want, and they're gonna have a barrel that they're using, and it's your caliber choices are gonna be very small, and but the problem with that is the cost of those rifles is very prohibitive. So I would kind of like to get back to where we're giving customers choices, and you can build your rifle somewhat a la carte. And by providing your own action, you're probably going to take about $1,000 out of the cost of that rifle.
Right, where it now becomes a much more practical proposition where, and I've talked about this in the 7mm series, and for those of you that are new, welcome to the channel. But what I talked about in that series was how, whether you're talking about what I mentioned earlier, the pre-fit route or the full custom route, or like Dale said, the system rifle, you don't really get what you want necessarily. You get to choose from what they have. Like you kind of go, okay, well, this is closest to what I want, but you're kind of compromising one thing or another. Where with this, you have an opportunity to breathe new life into a rifle that already has meaning for you, for whatever reason. But you get to pick the cartridge. You get to pick the barrel profile. You get to pick the barrel length, the twist rate, the finish, the break, the this. Like you're in the driver's seat. So you still get that custom rifle feel without having to have $1,000 receiver in there because you already have it, and without necessarily having to buy a stock because the one you have might already do what you want it to do. So it's a way to get a custom rifle in your safe without having to have that super prohibitive cost associated with it, or having to compromise and buy a finished rifle that's done but maybe $3,000, and there's things about it that you would change if you could, but you can't. So we're really excited about this, and we feel like a lot of companies aren't paying any attention to this. And again, we wanted to bring attention to it and lower the intimidation level and make it approachable so you guys know what you're getting into and you're not afraid to call us and ask questions. If you're serious about doing something, we'd love to help. So,
And we'll be working on a web page so that you can look at it and kind of figure out. You might have some questions about it, but at least you'll have somewhere to start. So you
right. Because the bulk of the people, I field a lot of the calls now because we're trying to keep Dale in the back working on guns for the most part. So I field a lot of these calls when I'm here. And usually after a guy gets done apologizing for feeling like he's wasting my time, and I tell him what the cost of all this is for a rebarrel, the most common thing I hear after that is, really, that's it? That's all it costs? Like they're expecting it to be much more money. And I'm always surprised when people say that, like, that's it? They're expecting bigger numbers. And what I was going to transition into next is that you can get amazing performance and precision by doing this. I think people have a tendency to think that the more money they spend on a gun, the better it's going to shoot, and that's not necessarily true. A lot of times what you're getting is you're getting to pick every single thing, and you're not really limited by anything, where with a rebarrel, you have some limitations because you have an action that you already have. You have to use that action, and you might not have many stock choices, but you still get to pick the cartridge and the barrel and the twist rate and all that. So, and you're having a very experienced gunsmith put it together for you. So these rifles can shoot amazing. Like this one, this was just a concept rifle that we decided to put together so that way we could play with it. And the thing shoots incredible, as you'll see in the next video. Like, Dale builds a really good rifle, and every rifle that he's ever rebarreled for me, the rifle shoots incredible. So this is a way for you to get that super high level of precision without the giant price tag. So I think we're going to talk briefly about what makes an accurate rifle and why is it achievable with the services we're promoting. First, it's a quality barrel with a decent size profile. You don't have to have a big heavy barrel, but it helps. Lighter, featherweight barrels still can shoot very well, but they have a tendency to start throwing shots as they warm up, where a bigger profile is going to have the shot stay together longer before it starts doing weird things. And using a quality barrel, like we've cut, I don't know how many hundreds of Excaliburs, and they shoot amazing. I don't know that we've ever had to replace one because it was faulty. We've never had to send one back that I know of. They work. They're a button rifle barrel, and they're hand lapped for finishing, and they shoot great. So a good barrel with a decent profile, a chamber that's cut straight with the bore axis and the bolt face and the recoil lugs. Now this is something that is kind of taken for granted, but it's not a given. Like we've rebarreled a lot of rifles that wore out prematurely, like factory rifles, because the chamber wasn't cut in line with the bore of the barrel. So the throat and the lead wore out prematurely on one side, and the other side hardly wore at all, and it caused tremendous accuracy issues. So we've had to rebarrel rifles prematurely from major manufacturers like 308s, where you should get a good 5,000 rounds of barrel life. We're pulling off at 2,000 rounds because they won't shoot anymore because the chamber's crooked.
We had a local police department bring their sniper rifles in, and they were starting to wonder what was going on with them. And there was 4 rifles, and 3 of the 4, the throats wore on one side way more than the other, which
Right.
pretty much means they weren't straight.
Right, and we could see it, so Dale cast the chambers anyway, just to make sure, and when we pulled the casts out, you could see that they were cut crooked, so that caused it to wear out prematurely. And it can cause accuracy issues, right out of the box, the gun can still shoot well, but that's gonna rear its ugly head at some point. So having somebody like Dale build your rifle versus buying a factory gun, the chamber's gonna be straight, or it's not going out the door. So that's something that people take for granted, but it's not a given. A good crown on the barrel that's clean and true with the bore axis. Free floating the barrel. We nothing goes out our door unless the barrel's free floated. Bedding the action, which we already mentioned, prevents twisting and can prevent point of impact shifts. It's just, again, these are all things that just reduce the amount of variables, so it makes it easier for you to have an accurate rifle that's not fussy and is easy to make it shoot well. A good trigger that breaks clean and consistent, which we already mentioned. Even if you don't have access to an aftermarket trigger, Dale can doctor just about any trigger and make it better. So that's a contributing factor, because a good crisp trigger that breaks clean and has lower pull weight is going to make anybody a better shooter. It's going to make your group smaller. So because you're not sitting there wobbling, anticipating for it to go off. When you expect it to go off, it goes off. And then there's different recoil management systems, which we think are important. Things that you can use to manage recoil are adding weight to the rifle or using muzzle brakes and suppressors. We think that you should do what's best for you, but we think those can all be good means of making the rifle controllable and consistent, so that you're not anticipating that recoil, which is going to make you a better shooter because it cuts down on flinches and that anticipation of it going off. And if you're shooting long range, having some type of muzzle device, whether it's a muzzle brake or suppressor, can reduce that recoil and muzzle jump and make it easier to spot your own impacts. So we think that's an important part of the system too.
I guess the one thing I would add there about triggers, when you have a good trigger on a gun versus one that's creepy or heavy, it really improves your confidence. When you have a flyer, you're not going to be asking yourself, was that me or the gun? You're gonna know if it was the gun or not. It's just a lot easier to shoot a good trigger, obviously,
Right, and I think people don't know until they do it. Like, we have a lot of guys that come in that might be in their 40s and have shot factory triggers their whole life, and they're used to 5 and 6 pound triggers that are squishy and whatever, and we have them touch an aftermarket trigger or a trigger that Dale's worked on. When it breaks clean, they're astounded by that, but they also can't believe how light it is. And to us, 2 pounds is a good weight, for an average hunting rifle. But most guys, if they're used to factory triggers and they break a 2 pound trigger, they're like, holy cow, that's light. Well, once you get acclimated to that and you get used to it, and the gun actually still can surprise you to some degree, you're going to shoot better. Where if you're sitting there pulling and pulling and pulling and trying to stay steady and not knowing when it's going to go off, impatience sets in, frustration sets in, and it gets really hard to be consistent. Not to mention the fact that you're adding all that torque and tension into the gun trying to get it to go off. So we think everybody's going to be a better shooter with a good crisp trigger that's a reasonable pull weight. So, and whether that's aftermarket or Dale does his voodoo to it, that's the service we can offer too. So this rifle is a Remington 700 long action 473 bolt face that Dale had, and it's in a HS Precision stock. I think this is their Pro Varmint series. It's got the wider beaver tail forend, non-adjustable cheek riser. They do offer stocks with an adjustable cheek riser. This is I guess it would kind of be our entry level into aftermarket stocks, where they're in that $460 price point. There are some that we can find for that are a little bit less expensive, but sometimes they need a little more work. So you might end up having a little more in the labor. Like, a lot of times if there isn't a turnkey aftermarket stock like this, guys might look at Boyd's or something like that, or Bell & Carlson. And those stocks can work fine too, but sometimes they might need a little more massaging. So this is an HS Precision. I think it's Pro Varmint. It does have a hinged floor plate magazine. These rifles are also compatible with HS's Dropbox magazine. It's like a lower profile hunting Dropbox magazine system. And obviously those have different prices associated with them, whether you have the hinged floor plate or the Dropbox magazine. We have a Excalibur, I think it's a number 5, 26-inch 7-twist 5R barrel on there. 8 twist is most common for 6.5 millimeter, but we like shooting big monolithic bullets and have a tendency to err on the side of more twist, just because we're in Minnesota, it's really cold, and when you're at low elevation and low temperature, your twist or your stability, bullet stability does drop, so it helps to over twist things a little bit. It's not going to hurt anything. And then on the end of it, we have our, I don't know if you can see it in the picture, maybe I'll loosen this and turn it. We have our PMB, or precision muzzle brake, and this is a ported brake. It's kind of like a radial where it has ports on both sides, but it does not have ports on the top or the bottom. So all the gas goes out essentially 90 degrees left and right. And these muzzle brakes are very effective despite how small they are. They only add like 1.5 inches or 2 inches to the barrel, but still reduce upwards of 50% of the recoil. So we think it's a really elegant solution for a rifle like this, where Dale's able to turn it to have it basically match the profile of the barrel, and it doesn't add a ton of length, but still is very effective at reducing recoil. And for a cartridge like this, the 6.5 Weatherby RPM, it's really all you need. You can get a more advanced or a brake that reduces recoil more, but it's not really required. It's a very modest cartridge despite its case capacity and performance. And then I think we have a Trigger Tech trigger in it. I think that's a, yeah, why don't you pull it out, play with it a little bit.
It's angled.
So, again, Remington 700 action. We have a Vortex Viper, I think it's a 4 to 1650 on here, with Milradian clicks. And I'm not sure on the rings if they're worn or what they are, but again, 26-inch barrel, HS Precision stock, Timney trigger, or not Timney trigger, this is a Trigger Tech. Mm-hmm. And the rifle shoots amazing, as you guys will see in the next video. It's just something that, when we want to play with something, this is what we do. We put it in we don't have to say, okay, the only way we can test this and get good results and bring it to the audience is to throw as much money at it as possible. This was an action Dale had, a stock that we had that is a nice stable platform that can make a really accurate rifle. We took a good high quality rifle barrel that is an appropriate twist. Dale did his magic on chambering and threading and made sure the barrel's free floated, timed our brake, and turned it to match the profile. Bead Blast finished it, and he broke it in and then shot some factory ammo and some hand loads through it and then passed it on to me, and I did what I do with it and tested the 3 different bullets and did load development for each of them. I guess that's something maybe we should talk about too.
Sure.
So we decided that for this project, if you decide you want to rebarrel to the 6.5 Weatherby RPM to as kind of some incentive, and that, you know, this is something that to show that this is something that we really believe in and that it has a lot of it has really great performance, is that if you decide to rebarrel with us to the 6.5 Weatherby RPM, we're going to provide you with our load data free of charge. So that way you'll know what brass we used, primer, bullets, powders, charge weights, velocities we achieved, all that. So you have a good starting place to hit the ground running with this. And I'll also give you the information on what our final loads were that you're going to see in the next video. And you'll see how well those shot. It just, it turned out amazing and wasn't all that fussy. You know, it didn't take a whole lot of work to get this thing to shoot. So so that's something we're willing to share. We did test a little bit of factory ammo, but just the Barnes 127 LRX. And I'll go into the details of that in the next video on how that shot. You're going to have an action that you're providing, and then we'll take care of everything else, and you can have a custom rifle that is what you want it to be and can perform up there with any other custom rifle for a fraction of the cost. So again, this is something we just want to get in front of you guys because I think a lot of people are anxious about it and afraid to call and ask questions. So we wanted to lower the intimidation factor and get some numbers in front of you guys and encourage you to do this, because we feel like there's a lot of these rifles out there, that need some love and we want to give you a reason to get them back in action. So next we'll get to the 6.5 RPM performance, and we'll review the costs again. But if you guys have something that fits the bill based on what we described, don't be afraid to give us a call. We'd love to help you out and get some breathe some new life into those rifles.
Yeah, make sure you subscribe so you get the notices for the reloading series.
Yep, yeah, we're going to be starting on the reloading series as well. So this series is going to be a longer series. Like I said, that's a little more drawn out. But after this video and the next one, I'm going to start plowing into that reloading series and try to show you guys how we wring the most out of these cartridges, regardless of what they are, without getting carried away on equipment and steps and process. So I think that's going to be super helpful for everybody. And then look for content on the 270 this coming early summer. It's below zero here. It was 15 below this morning, so I'm not going out doing any testing. So it's going to be a while before we get to that. But the reloading series, all the testing's already done, so it's just a matter of me filming and cranking out the videos. So look forward to that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you.